We have a great guest here today. He's been on the conference now on different places and in different panels. I think I've seen him around to talk to us about Java, the JVM, and he's gonna talk about the Diabolical Developer's Guide to Picking Your Java. Let's see if we can get Martijn Verburg on the stream. Martijn, is this working?
I believe it is. Hooray for technology.
Excellent. Yeah, it's amazing.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
No, it's until now everything's been going well, at least on my end. So let's keep fingers crossed that it stays like this.
That's cool. not been too bad at all.
So I think we have a few minutes till the top of the hour, and we'll take a few minutes just to warm up and let the people come into the session. And I think this topic that's coming up is really near and dear to my heart. That should be really, really interesting, your talk there. I work at a company, we do Java development mostly. I mean, also front-end development, but a lot of back-end Java development. And one of my bigger jobs one of the bigger things we had to do in the last few years was migrating from Java 8 to Java 9. And so with all the changes that entailed, like the new cadence for Java, the new JDKs, the new policy of Oracle. And I spent quite a few conferences, like internal company conferences, talking to customers about what you can expect coming and where we're going. And we're looking at what options we have, but we're not sure. And what I'm really hoping today, what's going to happen is that you are going to present us with a talk. And then afterwards, I will be able to say I made the right decision. I hope that's that's what's going to happen.
Fingers crossed, as long as your bosses aren't watching, right?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I can you never find out. But it's an interesting topic. It's really complicated. It's gotten really complicated, right, in the last few years. And maybe it's a bit easier now if you get started, but it's been quite rocky. So I'm hoping we get a little bit of insight in that topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It has been a confusing time for the industry, but I think we've come out the other side, and let's hope talks like this help clear up the last remaining confusion, and we can all move forward.
Absolutely. And I think it's necessary to talk about that. That was sort of it's been hard during that period to see that Oracle wasn't communicating a lot. So there was, I don't know, from probably obvious reasons that they couldn't or shouldn't or wouldn't, whatever. And it was hard to figure out before. And I think if you enter now in the industry, it's probably easier. Like if you would start now and you look at the landscape, it's probably a bit easier to identify what to do. But yeah, it's interesting. Okay. So I think it's about 3 o'clock, at least my time, Central European time. I'm not sure, where are you located at the moment?
I'm in London, United Kingdom. So I'm 2 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So it's not too bad.
So it's good that Nikolai added both time zones to the schedule.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're in a new talk, the Diabolical Developer's Guide to Picking Your Java. Martijn, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your background and what brought you to this conference and to this talk. And then after that, I will roll the pre-recorded talk. And then after that, of course, as with all the other talks, we'll have time for a lot of questions.
Sounds good. So where I sort of came into this was about 8 or 9 years ago. I helped form the London Java user group. And as part of that user group's kind of initiatives and willingness, we saw all the way back in the day when the Apache Foundation left the Java standards body over the battle between Apache Harmony and getting the TCK and things.
Right.
That was long history. So we saw as a Java user group, there wasn't much representation at the highest levels of Java in terms of user representation, right? So one of the things our user group did was to join the Java standards body and to start putting together communities around the adoption of Java standards and building Java itself and getting more end users involved in the process of how Java was being made. So roll forward several years. As part of that, we created Adopt OpenJDK, which was initially designed just to help developers get into working with OpenJDK and building it and making changes to it.
Okay.
But we came to the quick realization, especially after the move from Java 8 to 9 and Oracle's change in the cadence and subscription model, that the Java ecosystem at large needed to have a $free and license-free Java binary. I'll call it a Java binary, an OpenJDK binary that they could use if they were unable to choose a commercial subscription. And it just exploded from there, basically. So I was running JClarity at the time, which was a Java performance tuning company. and Adopt became quickly the next major thing that jClarity was doing alongside its tooling. IBM, Red Hat, Azul, Amazon, a whole bunch of other companies came piling in. And before you know it, we've got 170 million downloads.
Oh my God.
Well over 2,000 people on our Slack, hundreds of volunteers, 150
Amazing.
GitHub repos. It's been a bit of a ride. And now I'm actually at Microsoft. So Microsoft acquired jClarity in part because of the work we were doing at Adopt. So I now run the Java engineering group at Microsoft.
I get to hear this.
I know, as strange as it sounds. So we
cool.
have a pretty significant group. I can't talk about exact numbers and things, but you'll see us doing things like the Windows ARM64 port. We're working on Java itself. We're doing the tooling. We continue to support Adopt. It's a brave new world.
That's amazing. I mean, first of all, Adopt OpenJDK, thank you so much for starting that. We are actually using Adopt OpenJDK as well, and it's been a light point, right? A point of clarity in the whole time where it was unclear. It was like Adopt OpenJDK seems like the thing to go with, and this seems to be the rock solid thing, and it seems to be around, and it seems to have a good future. So I'm very happy about that. And with Microsoft, I think we talked maybe on one of the betas of Accento a few weeks ago, or at least I heard you talk about that. And that's interesting because, I mean, Microsoft did initially way back, like in the 90s, I think, in the beginning of the 2000s, they did do Java work. For them, I think it was the idea that maybe that would be their next language. And then they had a falling out, and then Oracle got involved. And then it basically, they went with .NET and so on, their own way. And it's really cool to see that Microsoft is getting back into, probably they've been into it all the time, I assume, but it's getting more visible and getting more traction there. So that's quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has culturally changed direction significantly under Satya in the past 5 to 7 years. They're now a heavily open source company, and they're now very much about being a cloud company. That means, they welcome any runtime onto their platform. Right. And that's the reality. They're a commercial company. They're here to make money, and so being welcome to all runtimes makes commercial sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of the open source ethos and the new cultural attitude that Microsoft has right from the top all the way down, which is, to me, the really exciting thing. So that, they treat the Node community, the Python community, and the Java community in the right way. And I think that's what I'm enjoying about the experience there so far.
It's extremely promising what we've seen the last few years from Microsoft. So let's hope that that continues this way forward. I would propose I'll just try to share your pre-recorded talk. If that works out, we'll go full screen with that, and then we'll meet on the other end and can answer everybody's questions and spend a little bit of time discussing the topic. If that's okay for you?
Sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. I hope people enjoy it. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martijn Verburg. Some of you may know me as the Diabolical Developer. I'm the Software Engineering Group Manager for Java. Yes, Java at Microsoft, which may sound like a strange combination, but there you have it. Microsoft is involved heavily in Java these days, which is fantastic, of course. And today I'm going to cover with you all of the various options you have for the provider of Java that you and your enterprise can have going forward, the various legal or cost ramifications of some of those choices, so on and so forth. There's a wide variety of choice out there today. It is confusing for some. I'm hoping that this talk will cut through some of the confusion and allow you to make an informed choice going forward. My details are up on the slide here, so I will just carry on. Quick thank you to Nikolai before I carry on. He invited me today to speak at Accento. Super chuffed to do it. I've been following, of course, his Twitch stream and his blog for a long time now. So thank you, Nikolai. It's a great honor to be here. I certainly hope I don't let you down. All right, on we go. Yes. Java at Microsoft. It is a thing. So I run the Java engineering group at Microsoft. We also have some sister groups at Microsoft as well, dealing with all the various Java services like Azure, Spring Cloud, and so on and so forth we have today. So it's a very exciting time. Microsoft as an organization it has a bit of a history with Java. It's fairly new to Java in terms of putting in as much effort as we are today. And so you'll see a lot more exciting things coming from us. If you'd like to speak to me or some of my team members about that, we are running a container room today where we're talking about all sorts of topics to do with containers and Kubernetes, but we'll happily answer any questions about Java there as well. This slide I put up as a bit of a warning. It's the talks I give tend to be pretty open, they're transparent. I will warn you if I'm putting on my Microsoft hat or if I'm speaking as a community member, and I try not to hide too much of what's going on behind the scenes, so you have been warned. These are the 5 things I will cover. A quick bit about terminology. There's some terminology that you should understand that goes in and around Java standards and how they're put together and what it means to be compliant with the Java specification, things like that. I'll then quickly cover what happened with Oracle's Java, why all of a sudden there's this explosion of choices for where to get your Java from. I'll then go over your options, including all of the OpenJDK providers, of which there are now a good 6 or 7 significant providers you can choose from. And I'll cover some of the legal and business ramifications of picking one or the other, or technical ramifications as well, for that matter. Then last, I'll dig quite a bit into Adopt OpenJDK. Some of you may have heard it is now going to become Eclipse Adoptium. This is the kind of most vendor neutral, I guess, provider neutral downstream provider of OpenJDK. It's backed by a whole bunch of different vendors, but to my mind, equally as importantly, by Java user groups and other individuals in the community as well. So I'll dig into that. I'm biased, by the way. This is my first disclaimer. I sit on the steering committee of Adopt OpenJDK, so I am biased towards it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. So first of all, terminology. There's some strange terminology in and around the Java standards, so I'll quickly dig into those so you have some context when I speak about some of the options later on. First of all, we have Java Standard Editions. This is what you'll see is called Java SE. This has something called a specification around it. So there's a very formal language and JVM specification that makes up Java Standard Edition. And in order to call yourself Java, you have to do 2 things. One, you must pass the Technical Compatibility Kit, the TCK. So you have to pass it, and it's a pass or fail. It's not a I got to 90%. You either do or you don't. That's one thing you have to do. And to actually use the Java, trademark name, you also have to enter an agreement with Oracle. I won't go into those details. But those are the 2 things you need to call yourself Java on your website. You can, however, say you are Java compatible if you just pass the TCK. And if you are a provider of OpenJDK, which is a full derivative of OpenJDK, including the VM and the class libraries, you can actually ask Oracle for a free version of the TCK, which by all accounts they give to you all the time. So most of the OpenJDK providers will take that TCK, they'll run it and prove that their build meets the specification. There is also a closed commercial TCK as well. That's usually used for companies who are building standalone implementations of the specification that are not based on OpenJDK necessarily. They typically still have the OpenJDK class libraries, but their VM might be different. So I can point to Azul Zing as an example, IBM's J9 is another example of this. So that's kind of some of the terminology around it that you might hear bandied about. And you'll see quite a few companies do place some weights on passing the TCK in particular. Second bit of terminology is around OpenJDK itself. OpenJDK is a place, it is not a thing. So it's really the project and the community where the work on the source code for Java is effectively done. People do produce OpenJDK binaries, but the OpenJDK project itself doesn't really do so. It's all downstream providers that perform that role. So you look at Oracle themselves, IBM, Red Hat, Adopt, Azul, Alibaba, Bellsoft, to name a few. It's not all of them, it's not extensive. I'll go into that later. They produce the downstream binaries. So think of OpenJDK as a place, not a thing, and you'll put yourself in good stead. So what's caused all this? Why are we even talking about this topic? We everyone's just used to downloading Oracle's Java now, right? Well, that's actually changed quite a bit now. So Oracle changed the licensing terms and support model around Java. They're effectively looking to get a commercial subscription business out of Java. If you are if you need more than 6 months support or free updates, I should say, for a particular version of Java, and you want to use Oracle's Java, you will need to pay a commercial support license. So you'll have to get into a subscription business. Now, for some folks, that's perfectly acceptable. They're like, yep, okay, Java is truly valuable to us. Oracle are the stewards of Java. They put in all the work. Paying a subscription fee is a completely reasonable thing to do. But why did Oracle do this? Why is Oracle charging for a runtime when the rest of the world doesn't really charge for runtimes anymore? And the answer is simply this. Profit. Right, it's Oracle is a for-profit company, as is Microsoft, so I completely understand their position. And they do need to make money off Java somehow, right? And making money off a runtime is an incredibly difficult thing to do as a direct business model, or as an indirect business model, I should say. And Oracle, I think, has perhaps struggled to do that over the years. They haven't quite been able to capitalize on the fact that they own Java effectively. So a direct subscription model, to my mind and to their mind, clearly made sense. And I wish them well at it. I hope they do make profit. I hope Java is well funded, has a good revenue stream, and that all the hard work that the Oracle engineers have put in particular is well paid for. So I personally have no issue with this. So as I mentioned, there's an Oracle end of public updates. So you only get the free updates for 6 months from Oracle. After that, you will not get those fixes for free anymore. You need to either upgrade your version of Java, say from 13 to 14 to 15 and so forth every 6 months, or you will need to pay a subscription fee to Oracle. Or the third option, and that's what I'm going to dive into more details, is you can go for a different provider from Oracle. So there's now lots of other companies that will produce an OpenJDK binary, which is Java compatible, right? Passes a Java TCK, so therefore it's compatible with the specification that you can use as your runtime. There is a very, very good document, long document, but a good one, by the Java Champions group. It's in the bit.ly link there. Java is still free. It's about 20 pages. It's well worth the read. It really dives into the deep detail of all of the options I'm covering in this talk, as well as all the reasoning and licensing challenges behind things. So, which option do you go for? Your poor old Neo, the Java engineer, standing there having to make a decision, or your Trinity, the Java engineer, standing there having to make a decision. Which pill do you choose? And there's actually 3, not 2, so I'll go into them. Number 1, get an Oracle subscription, right? You'll get an absolutely brilliant JDK. You know it's going to be rock solid. You know it's going to have all the bug fixes, etc. in it, because it's being delivered by the people who kind of own Java at the end of the day, right? So I think something like 90% of contributions of the Java source code come from Oracle. The largest contributors, they hold a lot of the key leadership positions in OpenJDK. And the pricing, certainly at the smaller number of JVMs, is not prohibitive, right? I've seen the pricing tables. It's free there in the public. You can go to the link I've got there. It's not one where you're going to go, crying to your bank manager kind of thing. So they're not being unreasonable at all, not at the sort of small, medium enterprise scale. Potentially enterprise pricing is a little bit different. I'm not sure. I haven't dug into that myself. It's worth a look. The key thing here is that you are directly supporting Java if you pay for this, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you are helping pay for these 2 gentlemen, as an example. So Mark Reinhold and Brian Gertz, hopefully familiar names to you. We need people like these to continue to have their salaries paid, right, to be selfish, so they can continue producing the wonderful things they do in Java today, right? So that is kind of an element we do have to think of as a wider community here. So consider an Oracle subscription, have a look at the pricing. It's well worth looking at. This is coming from me, who's, usually very open source, very free in his beer kind of person, but hey, everyone has the right to put a roof over their heads, and we're all software engineers, we all have to get paid, right? Option number 2, And this is an option that some people are going for. They're very brave. They're staying on the last free updates that they can get for whatever version of OpenJDK they're on. And they just continue running their software on that version, and they don't get any of the security or stability patches going forward. You can see what I've put there as an image. This is not recommended whatsoever. You are just a walking target. So please, please, please do not do this to yourself. So don't go for option 2. Option 1 is reasonable. Option 2, absolutely not. Option 3, you can choose an OpenJDK provider. So for the all-important, what we call long-term service release versions, and I'll dig into that a little bit. So for OpenJDK 8 and 11, it's not actually Oracle who are leading those two source projects anymore. It's actually Red Hat and SAP who are leading those two source projects. So it's Red Hat and SAP, supported by the long list of companies there that I've listed below, who are actually continuing to update the source code for Java 8 and Java 11. It's all the security patches, stability patches, all that good stuff that you expect. So every quarter, we get those updates. Oracle continues to lead the TIP project, so to speak. So as I'm thinking out loud now, I think that's at version 15 or 16. They will continue to lead that. They put out a version. They most recently put out 14 as an example. They officially lead that. They put out a free OpenJDK build for 6 months that people can use. However, their Oracle JDK is commercially licensed, so you need to pay for it effectively. You do have some other versions which are supported as a medium term support release. So Java 13, Azul Systems has a Java 13 medium term support release policy. And the reason why I say LTS or long term support for Java 8 and Java 11 is because there is a bit of a gentle person's agreement, perhaps not agreement, there is just a de facto standard that all of the OpenJDK providers are treating Java 8 and Java 11 as a long-term service release. But that is actually, technically speaking, a provider decision, a binary provider decision. It's not really the decision of the actual OpenJDK source project. The project leads happen to support that policy for now, but you should always keep those two concepts distinct in your mind. So you can choose an OpenJDK provider, and this is where you get a $free and royalty license-free, field-of-use-free binary to use, right? And this is quite important for a lot of people. And you can get commercial support. It's limited. Only a few providers actually have that. So if you're a company who has an expectation that you need to pay for support, perhaps for compliance reasons or because you do genuinely need it, then there are a couple of options for you. Let's go dig into them. There are loads of OpenJDK providers now. You have Adopt OpenJDK, which is now turning into Eclipse Adoptium. You can see big companies like Alibaba, Amazon are providing their own distribution. You've got Bellsoft. You can get OpenJDK via your Linux distro, so you can just say apt-get or yum, and it'll arrive from Debian, Red Hat, or whoever your Linux distro is. Oracle, as I said, provide an OpenJDK binary as well as their own Oracle JDK binary, so you've got to split those two concepts separately, and I'll have to update the slide after this talk to make sure that concept's very clear. So there's an Oracle JDK, that's the paid for commercial version, and then there's Oracle's OpenJDK, which is the free binary they release every 6 months that you can use for 6 months until you have to update. Red Hat, of course, have been providing Java for a long time. And SAP Machine also now provides 11 and 14, I believe. Lots of choices. So I'm going to dig into each of them a little bit. So Alibaba has actually had Dragonwell out for a little while. It's not as well known in some Western countries, I guess, as it is in China and Chinese or speaking territories. They have Java and 8 and 11 now, so you can ignore the bullet point that says Java 8 only there. The interesting thing about Dragonwell is that they have done a lot of work to make unsafe safer. So famously in Java 9, public access to Sun Disk Unsafe was pretty much blocked by the module system in Java, or by the application of the module system and security in Java. Alibaba clearly needed that functionality but wanted to do it in a safer way, and they have certainly some changes in their binary which you may find useful if you're a heavy unsafe user. So that might be an option to go for. Remember, if you are using SunMISC unsafe, that you really, really, really need to have some safety rails on. You need to go and call in health and safety and get a health and safety check done, unlike these two gentlemen here. Amazon. So Amazon Corretto came out with a bit of a public relation blast year before last, as I recall. Obviously, James Gosling, the father of Java, works for Amazon. I don't think he's actually too closely associated with the OpenJDK itself, but he's obviously a supporter. Some folks might know Arun Gupta, who's working there now at the moment as well. Perfectly decent OpenJDK binary. They obviously run it internally on Amazon, so it must be pretty darn good, right? They have a few patches which they found to be very useful for Amazon for workloads on AWS. The key thing, of course, is that there's no real support here, right? It's not as if you can submit a support ticket for running Corretto on your own desktop and expect the Amazon engineers to go and fix it for you. If you're a paying AWS customer and you've got the proper support contract in place for running your Java workload on AWS, then I suspect you can expect to get some better support. But it really is more of a case of Amazon just displaying to the world, I guess, that they have some keen interest in Java and that they can produce, build, and support it to some degree. Azul. So Azul is the company that has been providing Java binaries probably for the longest outside of Oracle and IBM, I think. They've been around for a long time. They produce rock solid, stable, very well tested builds. They've been doing it for a long time. They have had a commercial support business around this for a long time. So they know exactly what they're doing, right? So this is a really, really good choice if you want to compare and contrast commercial offerings between, say, Oracle and IBM. Azul would be the third company I would pick and take a look at what they have to offer. They interestingly also provide the medium-term service release. So if you're looking like, hey, I really want that feature in Java 13 or 14, quite often you can talk to Azul and actually then get a backing from them to go and support that as at the source code level, continue patching the source and building binaries for a longer period. So do go take a look at that. You have your distro-based OpenJDK. So this is where you just trust your package manager to deliver you a decent OpenJDK. The gotcha here is that a lot of the distros don't necessarily run the TCK, and they're not necessarily, some of them are, but they're not all necessarily experts in building and maintaining Java itself. They're obviously being a package maintainers or a repo maintainer, the folks who are working at Debian and CentOS, they have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of packages to maintain, right? And so Java is an important one, but certainly not the only one they look after. So on occasion, you can get varying quality of the builds coming out of these folks. It's tightened up a lot recently, and they've sort of joined forces with the OpenJDK community a lot more going forward. But yeah, it's just a little bit of a warning there. Bellsoft, Liberica. Yes, so Bellsoft is a bunch of former Oracle engineers who worked on OpenJDK, obviously. They produce a very good little OpenJDK binary called Liberica. Very cool name. They support all the platforms. It's well tested. They do the TCK. They also provide some Java consulting services. So if you need more than just a runtime and you really want some consulting around how to structure and build your Java apps and so on and so forth, then they're well worth checking out. They're a relatively small vendor, would be my only warning. They've won a few small deals recently. I think they're going to work with JetBrains and I think possibly VMware as well, so the chances are they'll now start to grow. But if you're a gigantic enterprise, you may need to dig in a little bit there. There is, of course, Oracle's OpenJDK. Note the URL at the bottom there. So that is not the Oracle JDK, not the commercial one, that if you type in Oracle Java, that you go to their big splashy front page. The jdk.java.net is a very simple 1990 style web page which contain the OpenJDK binaries that you can use that they produce. So again, you get the 6 months of free updates, but there's no support, there's no documentation or anything like that at all. It's just the binary built by them that you can just download and use. Red Hat OpenJDK, if you have a RHEL server, you got a RHEL subscription, this is a no-brainer. Just use Red Hat's OpenJDK. It's very, very well tested. It's very well integrated with RHEL. So again, CentOS RHEL go use this one, as far as I'm concerned. SAP have always done a lot of Java for some of the big middleware products that they have. They support some interesting platforms like S390 and PowerPC. The only other company that really does it is IBM. So if you're looking to get Java working on those platforms, then SAP is definitely one worth looking at. And then there is Adopt OpenJDK, which is now going to be turned into Eclipse Adoptium. Adopt OpenJDK came about as kind of a reaction from the community, Java user groups, Java champions, a few vendors, when they were concerned that Oracle's move to the 6-month support, change to the 6-month support cycle, effectively making Java a subscription business for Oracle's JDK, that there wasn't wide enough choice right out there, free binaries that were well tested, well produced, etc., that the wider ecosystem could use. We certainly were not against Oracle going and having a subscription business and making sure that Oracle gets money out of Java. I think that's fantastic and good for all the reasons I explained before. But it was also pretty clear to us that the entire ecosystem, like the 12 million or so developers and all the companies they represent, not all of them were in a position to go and commercially pay for a Java runtime. It just wasn't going to happen. And so we just needed to ensure that the ecosystem at large had some free alternatives. So Adopt OpenJDK came about. It's a collaboration between a whole bunch of different vendors. I'll dig into it in some later slides. But you can go to adoptopenjdk.net, and it's currently legally backed by the London Java User Group, but we're moving to the Eclipse Foundation. It'll be backed by a software foundation, which will be good. It's business-ready binaries. We support just about every platform under the sun: Windows 32, PowerPC, Solaris, Spark, ZOS, ARM32, 64, and all the major platforms: so Mac, Windows, Linux, x86, as you'd expect. It's professionally tested. We pass. We have our own quality assurance suite called Adopt OpenJDK Quality Assurance, AQA. It's backed by a whole bunch of major vendors, or at least supported by a whole bunch of major vendors. So Azure, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Red Hat, all somehow contribute to Adopt OpenJDK, either through sponsorship or through engineering efforts. So it really is the vast majority of the community coming together to put together this solution, which is really cool. We've all your installers covered, so much like the commercial companies like Azul in particular, who do a fantastic job with their installers. We try to provide very much the same out-of-the-box experience. Adopt OpenJDK is also the new home for ICT Web for folks who are looking to still carry on with their kind of Java Web Start technologies, which is a small but significant subset. The Java Mission Control binaries are also now built at Adopt, which have been released to the wider community. One of the key tenets of Adopt OpenJDK is we wanted to throw the gates wide open to everyone. So everything is open source at Adopt. The technical steering committee does everything out in the open. We have something like 130 GitHub repos. All the conversations are open on Slack, and we try and we support as many build farms as possible. So one of the key tenets of Adopt OpenJDK is that anybody at home, or any vendor, any provider, any major cloud company can grab all of the infrastructure code at Adopt and bring it in-house, and they can build their own bits, because some of them need to secure their supply chain. They have to build the bits on their own, inside their own infrastructure, which is absolutely understandable. So we provide all of that plumbing for folks to build OpenJDK binaries as quickly as possible and as securely as possible, and with a high quality bar. So you can join us at those two locations there. You see the GitHub and the Slack. And no matter what type of engineer you are, we have work. I won't say work for you. We have fun things for you to look at. Right? There's Ansible, there's Bash, there's Jenkins, Groovy, there's React.js for the website, there's Kotlin for the API. There's core Java for the testing, there's C and C++, there's all sorts of stuff. So no matter what you like doing, we've got fun things for you to work on. Through Adopt OpenJDK, you can also download binaries with the Eclipse OpenJ9 VM alternative. So it's the OpenJ9 VM with OpenJDK class libraries. It's well tested. So when you get these at IBM, they pass the TCK. So I need to update the slides on this. They're not TCK'd at Adopt, to be very clear. But IBM's J9 through IBM is TCK'd. And for some cloud and container workloads, they're faster and more efficient. But it's only for some, right? And so you really have to measure, not guess, and make sure that, for your particular workload, check if OpenJ9 is a better alternative. So just to make it very clear again, at Adopt OpenJDK, we do not currently pass the TCK for OpenJ9. I just wanted to reiterate that, so I will delete that line from that slide. That should not be there. Next slide. So here are some of the logos of some of the folks who support Adopt OpenJDK. So you can see it's a wide range of companies, including some companies who build and sell their own OpenJDK distribution, right? And this kind of shows the importance of having a joint community-based distribution out there. And you can see users of Java here as well. People like Ocado, the big supermarket technology firm in the UK, so on and so forth. Here are some of the folks that are using Adopt in production who've helpfully and allowed us to state this publicly. So it's just a microcosm there again. This is a project that kind of got away from us volunteers. So there's a whole bunch of Java user group folks, a whole bunch of staffers from IBM, JClarity, and Red Hat, and a few other companies. And now we're at 170 million downloads. So the response to this has been incredible. It's sort of a testament to all the volunteers that we've had. So many people working really hard from so many different organizations. It's been absolutely fantastic to see. In terms of the structure, as I mentioned, we've got a whole ton of GitHub repos, and you can see some of the structure laid out here. So we have the steering committee at the top there, which are staffed by a bunch of the doers of the project. It's all out in the open who they are. It's roughly 3 folks from IBM, 3 from Microsoft. There's 1 person from Red Hat, 1 from Karakun, University of Zurich, and I think another member, which I forget possibly. We have the infrastructure group, build group, testing group, website group, security group. It goes on and on and on. This is just a small subset of all the various teams we have involved. There's a sort of a strict flow of how we build our binaries. It's very professionally done. So we get the OpenJDK source code, we choose the branch to build from, we apply any of our own patches should we need to, which is an absolute minimum set, usually just to change the version string to put in our name. We have a build, test, and deploy pipeline, and it's the test pipeline in particular which goes through an absolute battery of tests. So this is actually an old slide from quite some time ago now, so the numbers have gone up since. But you can see we have these 5 test pipelines that our release builds go through. And if you add up all those tests in a row, you've got well over 100,000 tests that we run through. And these are kind of business level tests, really. So we do things like run the Scala language. We run the Spring Framework tests. We run all the regression tests that OpenJDK itself has. We run performance tests, so on and so forth. So we know that these builds that come out are pretty well battle tested, and we're starting to see that some of the other OpenJDK providers are also taking this test suite in-house to run their ones, which we think is fantastic. So I told you I'd be biased, so if you want to check it out, have a look at Adopt OpenJDK. I obviously think it is the de facto OpenJDK you should go for, assuming you don't need actual commercial support, unless you're looking for commercial support from IBM for Eclipse OpenJ9 in particular. Otherwise, definitely look commercial support. Look at Oracle. Again, you'll be supporting Java. You can look at Azul. They've got a great history. And if you absolutely need free as in dollar free, then I think Adopt is a fantastic option. If you want to help us out at the Eclipse, you can see it there. So I'll skip past the Eclipse slide. I told you Java is still free. We did promise. There's now just lots of choice, which is a little bit unusual today. Thanks for your time. Again, I've been Martin Verbeek. I'm the Principal Java Manager at Microsoft, which always sounds a bit strange. You can find me there on Twitter, and you can find me at adoptopenjdk.net. And I'll see some of you in the Q&A after this talk. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for the talk. It was really interesting, and it was amazing to get an overview like that. What I just noticed is that at the end you pronounce your name. I was thinking maybe it's a Dutch name, and I come from Belgium, so I was trying to speak it. And did I mispronounce your name, or how should I pronounce it?
You're absolutely right. It is Martijn. It is a Dutch name.
Okay.
I was born there in the Netherlands, but moved to New Zealand when I was about 5 years old. So.
Oh, okay.
Confusion.
Right, and you're now in London. Okay, cool. You've been all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep bouncing back.
Super. Yeah. So to the audience, people that have been watching, if you have questions, now is the time. Just post them into the booth chat. Don't forget that it's the booth chat for the Java track and not the event chat. And I will definitely pick them up and ask Martijn. I've also got a few of my own questions here prepared because it was a bunch of stuff that I wanted to ask about. Maybe just till we get started until the people in the chat have a chance to write something. What I found funny in the beginning is that you mentioned, or interesting, you mentioned if you go with the Oracle JDK and you buy a license from Oracle, that obviously you're supporting the development of Java, which is, I mean, for people like us that and you that are working on systems that are built on Java, that's quite important. Well, it seemed to me very interesting that you mentioned Mark Reinhold and Brian Gutz as like two figureheads, people that are very well known also in the community. Maybe Oracle should consider, renaming the license to something like the support Mark and Brian Fund or something. I'd definitely be willing to chip in there because they're doing great work.
It pretty much is. I mean, I don't know the internals of Oracle's business and how their revenue streams and stuff work, but I mean, I can imagine, having worked at other big companies, that a subscription service for a runtime like Java is probably a direct revenue stream for that group, or at least must count in the positive for them.
Right.
And so I can only imagine that it is seen as a net positive for Oracle as a whole. But probably equally as importantly, it pays itself back, right? It pays for all the cost in terms of building and running Java. And I can tell you now that the number that it costs to run the fully sized Java engineering group, as far as Oracle does it.
Yeah.
I've done a back of the napkin calculation based off, what it costs to have a fully loaded engineer like Brian or Mark or Joe Darcy, and they've got lots and lots, right? Plus all the infrastructure and everything else. These are very big numbers, right? You're talking at least, it's well into the 8 figures, possibly 9, I would suspect.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we underestimate that. Sometimes we forget about that fact that there's so many smart people that have been doing amazing work. Like the JVM often gets cited as one of the best pieces of engineering and performance. Like people talk about, I'm using my custom code or it's natively compiled and all those other VMs. Except maybe the JVM, which is really good, well engineered. There's so much engineering time behind it. We sometimes tend to take it for granted, but it's quite an amazing piece of work that we have there.
Yeah, I think they calculated as well over 1,000 person years of software engineering has gone into the JVM so far. So it's actually really challenging for other runtimes to compete with that in the short term, right? So although lots of other interesting runtimes and language ideas do come into the ecosystem, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's great we push the boundaries. Things like the JVM, I think, and possibly Python, JavaScript, and maybe .NET as well, they kind of stand the test of time, really. And they'll stay, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I have the first question from the audience. Johannes Wengert, he thanks you for the talk, and he asks, could you explain what exactly the differences or what exactly are the update branches? For example, 8U or 11U in OpenJDK. What goes into those branches? What doesn't go into them? And who decides what goes where? Do you have any insight there?
Those are great questions. So I'll start with Java 8. So Java 8 has effectively split into 2 branches as one way of looking at it. So you can get 2 different types of Java 8 in the world. One is if you go with Oracle's JDK, because they have taken their branch of Java 8 development in-house. It's closed source, right? So Oracle does its bug fixes for its Java 8 in-house, produces an Oracle JDK 8, which the world can use and enjoy for that subscription fee. The rest of the world, which downstream providers produce OpenJDK binaries from, work off the JDK 8U branch in OpenJDK. So that's Red Hat, Azure, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, you name it. They're all banded together inside on that repo. There is actually a JDK 8U dev branch where all of the development happens as such, and then that gets merged into the 8U branch ready for an actual release.
Okay.
And OpenJDK still does a quarterly release cycle, just as we were used to from Oracle. So every quarter you'll receive a PSU or a CPU update. So all the critical security fixes and any other stability bug patches will go in there. And the question then it gets asked usually is, oh, okay, so what's the difference between Oracle's Java 8 and OpenJDK's Java 8?
Right.
And the answer is very, very little.
Okay.
They actually share the same bug tracker.
Okay.
And so it's pretty easy for both sides to kind of look at the open issues and make sure that each other's fixes are going into their version, right? So, I would argue, apart from the difference that has always been there between Oracle JDK and OpenJDK in terms of some of the fonts and a few other bits around sound libraries and things,
right,
which is always the case for Java 8, nothing else has really changed realistically, despite what some folks may tell you.
Okay. But are those differences with the fonts and those binaries that are natively licensed by Oracle? I think there used to be. Is that still the case in JDK 11, or have those things been synchronized?
That's all been synchronized. So in JDK 11, so Oracle again produces a Java 11 that they, Oracle Java 11, which they maintain themselves separately. The rest of the world again works on JDK 11U.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, Oracle and OpenJDK are pretty much identical. So no differences in font libraries or anything like that. That was all open sourced very generously and very kindly by Oracle. So that's all been sorted out. In terms of the decision making for Java 8 and Java 11, for Java 8, the leader of that project is Andrew Haley. He works for Red Hat, but he's actually representing himself as an individual as a project lead for 8U. So he makes go, no-go decisions on what bugs and features go into Java 8, and his mantra is stability, right? He just wants Java 8 to be stable. So you won't see new features and things going in very often unless it's absolutely critical to the industry, like TLS 1.3 for security.
Right.
Same goes for Java. Again, it's Andrew Haley and Gertz, I think, from SAP, who kind of make the go, no-go decisions on that particular branch. And then Oracle controls tip or head and going forward. So there's one more exception to this, or one more interesting point of this. For those folks who love Java 13, Azul is actually the sole maintainer of Java 13, continues to maintain Java 13 beyond the 6-month cycle. So if you're really keen on Java 13, then Azul is the company you want to go for.
Yeah, you mentioned this medium-term support, right, or whatever they call it, something on Java 13. I mean, what you mentioned with the lead on the certain branch or the specific version to decide the no-go, that's really interesting, because I think on Twitter I saw a discussion go by that I think it was the Shenandoah, the garbage collector, that people wanted to maybe backport it to, I think it was JDK 11, but I'm not sure. And there was then discussions, very informed, and I think very, very civil, very well informed discussions on the mailing list about, well, maybe that's not a good idea, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. And it seems like there's a some healthy discussion going on there between the different parties.
There's definitely a tension, right? I mean, Java 11 is kind of a stable, mature build now in a way, and adding a new garbage collector is a pretty major feature to add. The thing that Andrew Haley is having to weigh up, and I would not want his job right now, is he has always said that if there is something which is absolutely critical to the ecosystem for that version of Java, especially when it comes to a security or stability concern, he will consider a backport or he'll consider a merging of a major feature.
Yeah.
Shenandoah is an interesting one because it does provide a garbage collector which is needed for certain workloads that simply cannot be run on Java if that collector isn't there. Now, you could argue Shenandoah and ZGC are on tip, and therefore, people should just move to Java 15 and use Java 15. But the reality is the entire big data ecosystem, like all the Apache projects, Kafka and Spark and so on and so forth, they still have a lot of work to do to get themselves up to 15, right? And so it leaves the end user, so anyone who's trying to roll out a big data solution using Java will struggle to do so under Java 11. So I think that's kind of the calamity or the challenge that Andrew is facing. And again, I don't his position at all. And we'll see what decision he comes with at the end. Yeah,
it seemed like his arguments. So it seems very. I can totally understand where he's coming from, and I think it makes sense because in the discussion they were also talking about the fact that I don't know who maintains Shenandoah. Is it Red Hat or who does maintain it? But is there like a downstream Java that they have where they an 11 version where they have it merged in and make that available to customers?
They do. They actually have a special Shenandoah 11 branch, which they've had for quite some time. So Shenandoah has been running in production for their customers for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I'll be very transparent. Microsoft, we are interested in Shenandoah. Our engineers are also starting to actually patch it as well, because we believe it is stable enough to use under Java 11.
Yeah.
So we believe it is the right. Well, if it doesn't get merged, we will continue just to work with Red Hat on that separate branch anyway, because our customers, it is mission critical for some of their workloads, not all, but for some of their workloads, we do need a solution, and Shenandoah is currently the best thing on 11. So.
That's the whole topic I would like to continue talking about, but I need to get to some other questions from the audience. Let me dip into some other things here. There was an interesting question from Nikolai that I also wanted to ask us. That was one thing that surprised me, that the name would be changed, because I've gotten used to adopt OpenJDK over time, and you've mentioned it in your talk as well, that we'll be going to, I think it's Eclipse Adoptium, and Nikolai is asking, are we already calling it that? Will we be calling it that? When was is the transition point? When should we be calling Adopt OpenJDK something else?
Yeah, I think the transition point will be when we've formally moved the project over to Eclipse, which has not happened yet. We've set up the top level, what we call the top level project. Underneath that top level project will be a whole bunch of other projects, of which one of them will be the actual binary that we produce. At that point, we'll start calling it Eclipse Adoptium. You'll see the website move over and so on. There also needs to be a working group set up at Eclipse potentially. That's something we're investigating at the moment, which will deal with all of the kind of branding, licensing, and all that kind of stuff. So just call it Adopt for short, as that's the easiest thing to do. I think that's why we keep the Adopt, because people were calling it Adopt for short, and we'll go with that. And the reason why we made the name change is OpenJDK is actually trademarked by Oracle. I think we do need to take proper respectful care of that trademark, and it probably wasn't as tidy as it could be. So we wanted to fix that, and if we were moving anyway, it was the right time for the ecosystem to kind of go along with that big move.
Yeah, I think Eclipse has a lot of governments and a lot of standards also regarding that sort of thing, right? There's other projects also that have moved there, and then they become a little bit more caring or strict about licensing, and they try to get rid of some potentially conflicting things there. So, but I think Adopt is a good prefix, so we'll get used to that, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
We've got a question from Samuel Sandru, who's asking, he's not a Java dev mainly, but he's wondering, with all these vendors that are providing Java distributions, if you will, who decides on the specifications? So the language and the VM itself, assuming there's a handful of companies, are there tensions around this subject?
There certainly are tensions around the subject. So the way it works today is people can submit a JDK enhancement proposal to the OpenJDK project. And I say OpenJDK project, there are lots of projects inside the overall OpenJDK community. So you typically submit a JDK enhancement proposal, and you aim it at the projects which are most relevant. So recently, Microsoft, we created a JDK enhancement proposal for the Windows ARM64 port. And we have pointed that at the ARM64 project. And I think the project lead for ARM64 has to be one of the people who approves that JEP. And I believe, I'm a little bit hazy on the details here, I think also the OpenJDK lead, which is Mark Reinholds, typically also needs to approve of the JEP as well. So that's how kind of work is proposed and gets into OpenJDK. And as a default, then a thin wrapper gets wrapped all around a bunch of those JEPs, plus some other bits and pieces, and a Java specification request gets made at the Java standards body, which encompasses all of that work. So there is a bit of contention in the fact that people who are new to OpenJDK don't have an easy time of putting in their new technology ideas. They have to spend a lot of time at OpenJDK, first building trust, working with the community, before they can just add their piece of technology. And if they have a competing piece of technology, then sometimes they lose outright. So they might have an idea on, I don't know, how to do native images, for example. That competes against something that's running internally. So it's not quite the sort of have a pull request free for all that somebody can source.
Yeah, I think, it can make sense to have some sort of centralized point. So if I understand it correctly, with the OpenJDK project, in the end, basically the at Oracle. Like if Oracle decides that the JEP, there has to be, they're probably from a how to say it, as a public relations point of view, can't really say something, we don't want to do this because just reasons. They do have to do some sort of due diligence, I guess, on that. But in the end, it's basically Oracle that has a say about what gets into OpenJDK or not, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, if push really came to shove, it is the Oracle employee. I would almost argue it's the engineers who have spent a lot of the time, previously at Sun and who have kind of held technical leadership positions inside OpenJDK.
Yeah.
I think if you were to swap Oracle out from under those people tomorrow and replace them with Company X, we would turn around and say, hey, it's Company X making all the decisions. But in reality, it's actually the people, right, the individuals.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, I think that's one of the benefits that somebody like Mark Reinhold brings to the table, and also Brian Gutz in a different level, that they have a very good ability to say no also to certain things. Like they have to basically weed out all the things and be able to. It's like what you hear by Linus Torvalds and on many other projects, people that you need somewhere to say no to a bunch of things. Like that's basically.
You really do,
also
especially
mostly no.
Yeah, mostly no. Especially for Java, it's never going to be a leading edge language. It's a workhorse of the industry, right? And I think it would be a shame to lose that scope that it sits in.
You mentioned this ARM64 port, which I found really interesting because there's a lot of movement in that direction, right? Like Apple announced that all their hardware will be moving to ARM. So basically, that's not server based, that's client side, but still, I mean. Macs will be basically in 2 years will just be ARM64. I assume Microsoft is pushing for a 64-bit Windows port because also Azure and backend system servers, or what is the push there?
So twofold from Microsoft. One is we have consumer devices which are coming out that support the ARM64 chipset.
Right, there's a Windows 6 ARM port as well. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. That's right. And on this, the server side, I think we have one public blog post out there, so I'm allowed to say we're certainly looking at ARM64 on Azure. I think there is already an early beta, perhaps, of you can go get some ARM compute basically. I don't think anyone would be too surprised to see that Azure, as a major cloud provider, is going to be looking at providing this as a SKU, as we call it, a unit that people can go purchase. And ARM has proven from a hardware perspective that they can run certain workloads a lot cheaper, right, in terms of power consumption and things.
Absolutely.
So there is some attractiveness there for sure.
Do you know about the state of those ARM ports? I think the Linux ARM64 port has been around for a longer while. You guys, Adopt OpenJDK actually has a build, right, for ARM64?
It does, yeah. So Red Hat led the ARM64 port. It's very good. It's absolutely totally fine to use in production. The Windows one that we are working on it's in a beta, but we have already passed just about every test under the sun. So the Windows port is already looking in really good shape. It will take some time for it to truly land mainstream, but we at Microsoft we are already providing early betas that people can download and start running on Windows if they want. We don't know what the Mac port is going to look like yet. We're kind of waiting for Apple to come out from beneath the usual Apple privacy shield that they have, and come out to OpenJDK in the open and talk a little bit about the port work they're doing. But the one thing we will say is that Red Hat and Microsoft will both publicly support Apple and assist them with that port as quickly as possible. It's in the best interest of everybody.
Okay.
But having done the Windows port, I can say the ARM64 port code base as a whole is in super good shape. It was surprisingly, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of hard work by my engineers, but it was a surprisingly short time frame to get a full port up and running because the Linux port was already in such good shape. I'll put it that way.
That's good to hear because it seems like a bit of our future is moving towards this architecture. So it's good to hear that our Java software will run on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Martin, I think we've covered all the questions from the chat so far, and we're hitting on the end of our slot here. Is there anything you want to mention at the end here? Where can people go to follow you, to find more information related to this topic of different JDKs and Adopt OpenJDK?
Yeah, so there's two main things you want to go look at. If you want the more unbiased version, go to Java. It's still free. If you just Google for that, you'll see the Medium blog post by the Java team. That was a blog post which was approved by all of the different providers, so you can be a little bit more sure that there is an unbiased view on the world for that one. For my very biased view, go to adoptopenjdk.net and you'll be able to get a wealth of information and, of course, the binaries that we download there. I think the key thing I want to reiterate to everyone is that you kind of get what you pay for in terms of either real money or the effort you put back into an ecosystem like Adopt. So if you truly rely on Java, you should think about either paying for it, or you should think about spending a little bit of engineering time to contribute back to one of the communities that helps produce this thing. It's well worth it.
Okay, and getting involved with Adopt OpenJDK, we just go to Adopt OpenJDK, the website, and there's links there to how we can get going with maybe some issues, or I don't know what would be the best way to support the project there.
Yeah, we've got a Slack channel that you can jump on with over 2,000 people on there now, so it's a lot of volunteers. And a lot of folks, well, not all of them are volunteers, but a lot of them do, dip in and out, and we have plenty of small bug fixes or documentation or harder challenges if that's what people are into. And everything from Ansible and Docker and Kubernetes and Jenkins all the way through to React.js and JavaScript on the front end for the website. So no matter what your technology poison,
that's amazing. I can only recommend it. We do also use Adopt OpenJDK. It's been rock solid. It's been a beacon of light. Like I said before, it's clarity, that it's just a reliable distribution to use. So I want to thank you personally also. Thank you very much for your work on Adopt OpenJDK. And I guess now that Microsoft then is supporting this as well, it's really good news.
Yep.
Martijn, thank you very much for your talk and for your time. And
great. Thanks very much for hosting. Appreciate it.
Yeah, please. And hope to see you again next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.